Reports are emerging that a rift is widening amid growing tension between Prince Harry and King Charles.
The palace gate had seen kings, queens, mourners, soldiers, and scandals pass beneath its iron shadow. But that morning, it witnessed something almost unthinkable. Prince Harry arrived expecting a private entrance, a quiet meeting, maybe even a fragile moment of reconciliation. Instead, he was stopped cold. Not by rumor, not by confusion, by security officers carrying direct orders from Charles's office. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Harry had come to the palace believing the door was still open, even if only slightly. He understood the family wounds were deep, and he knew the king had become harder to reach with each passing month. But this was still his father's house in the emotional sense, a place tied to childhood, duty, grief, and blood. The palace gate mattered because it was not just an entrance. It was the line between belonging and exile. Harry stepped from the car with the tense calm of a man trying not to show how much the moment meant. He expected a private meeting connected to family matters and his strained relationship with Charles. A palace gate is the secured entrance to a royal residence, where officers control who may enter and who must remain outside. On most days, that system protects the monarch. On this day, it delivered a message sharper than any speech. The senior guard did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He looked at Harry, then looked down for a second too long, and repeated the order with painful formality. Harry was refused entry. Security had received specific instructions from Charles's office not to admit him. The words landed like iron. Harry kept one hand near the car door, frozen between leaving and demanding the truth. Charles already knew his son was outside. Inside the palace, the king had been told the moment Harry arrived, yet he remained silent. He stared at a sealed folder on his desk, and for several seconds, he said nothing at all. Charles's office means the private team that manages the king's schedule, access, messages, and sensitive decisions. That detail mattered because the order had not drifted up from a confused guard. It had come from power. The refusal was not a mistake at the gate. It had been prepared before Harry arrived, written into the security brief, and circulated through the proper channel. One aide noticed the instruction did not come from a junior office. It came through a line tied directly to the king's private staff. That made the silence worse. Someone had planned this moment. Someone had decided Harry should feel the gate close before he heard a father speak. Harry finally turned back toward the car, but the damage had already entered the palace walls. Charles remained behind the closed door, carrying the weight of an order that protected the crown and wounded his own blood. And before anyone could understand why the instruction had been given, one question began burning through the corridors. Who had convinced the king that his own son must be kept outside? This was never only about a gate. It was about a father, a son, a brother, and a crown that had learned to survive by shutting doors before hearts could open. Harry saw rejection. Charles saw danger. William saw consequences. Camilla saw the fragile peace of the palace trembling again. And each of them understood that one denied entry could reopen years of private pain. Harry sat in the car after the refusal, jaw tight, saying nothing as the humiliation settled around him. He had known the royal distance was real, but distance was different from denial. A royal family is not only a private family, it is also a public institution built around duty, image, and controlled access. That mattered because Harry's place had become trapped between blood and boundary, between being a son and being treated like someone who needed permission to approach his own father. Charles carried a different kind of fear. He had become both father and monarch, and the crown expected him to protect its calm, even when that calm wounded his family. The crown means the monarchy as an institution, not just the person wearing it. That difference mattered because the king could love Harry and still allow an order that cut him off. Charles understood the cruelty of that conflict, but he also knew the palace judged weakness faster than grief. William heard what happened and did not answer at once. The prince paused because anger and concern arrived together, and neither emotion was easy to speak aloud. Harry was his brother, but he was also the man whose return could reopen every argument the household had tried to bury. William chose his words carefully, asking first whether Harry had been told why. The silence that followed gave him the answer before anyone dared say it. Camilla reacted quietly, but the quiet said more than outrage would have. She asked whether Harry had come alone, then looked away when told he had expected to be admitted. The queen consort understood palace temperature better than most. She knew when one private decision could turn into a public wound. Camilla did not celebrate the refusal. She feared what it would pull back into the open. Old accusations, old loyalties, and the uneasy question of who truly had Charles's ear. Charles's private secretary had prepared two versions of the day's briefing. A private secretary is the senior aide who manages sensitive messages, schedules, and decisions for a royal figure. One version treated Harry's arrival as a possible family meeting. The other included the gate refusal order. That second version was the one placed before the king. Charles did not reveal this in public. The detail came through a documented internal account later described by a palace aide who had seen both papers. Harry finally leaned back in the car, still silent, while the palace behind him moved as if nothing had happened. William remained troubled. Camilla remained watchful. Charles remained hidden behind duty. And the real reason for the security instruction was not found at the gate at all. To understand why the palace treated Harry like a threat instead of a son, the story must return to the moment that turned hesitation into command. Every royal rupture has a moment people later pretend was smaller than it was. A sentence, a glance, a chair pushed back too sharply. For Harry and Charles, that moment came during a private Windsor meeting 3 weeks before the gate incident. No cameras, no public smiles. Just a father, a son, and one conversation that hardened into a decision no one could easily reverse. Harry entered that meeting carrying more than anger. He carried the ache of a man who believed every route back to his father had been blocked by aides, schedules, and quiet warnings. Windsor is one of the royal family's most important private residences, a place often used for family meetings away from public pressure. That mattered because Harry did not see the setting as official ground. He saw it as family ground, and that made what happened inside feel even more painful. Charles came into the room hoping to contain the tension before it spread again. The king wanted calm, but he also brought a written summary of concerns from senior staff. A written summary is a prepared document that gathers key warnings, issues, or instructions for a senior figure to review. Charles believed it would help keep the conversation controlled. Harry saw something else entirely. He saw proof that his father had arrived with palace voices already standing between them. Harry's face changed when Charles placed the paper on the table. He did not need to read every line to understand the message. The document meant staff concerns had reached the room before his own words did. Harry felt the old wound open again, the same wound that had made him believe the palace could turn family pain into office language. He asked why a son needed permission slips, warnings, and intermediaries just to speak to his father. Charles lowered his voice, and the silence grew sharper. He told Harry that love could not erase consequences. The words landed with the weight of a final warning. Charles was not shouting. That made it worse. The king sounded tired, controlled, and resolved, as if he had repeated the sentence inside his mind long before saying it aloud. Harry stared back, hurt not only by the meaning, but by how prepared his father sounded. Harry then crossed the line that everyone later remembered. He warned Charles that if private family access continued to be controlled, he would stop asking quietly. The detail was later described in a documented account prepared by a senior aide who was briefed immediately after the meeting. Harry did not call it a threat. He called it desperation. Charles did not hear desperation. He heard danger moving closer to the heart of the monarchy. Charles remained seated after Harry left. The room held the kind of silence that follows a door closing too hard. When his private secretary entered, the king did not ask for comfort. He gave an instruction. No unscheduled access. Not again. The private secretary, the senior aide responsible for managing sensitive royal decisions, wrote the sentence into the day's confidential note. That sentence became the seed of the security order. Harry walked away from Windsor believing he had demanded dignity. Charles stayed behind believing he had prevented chaos. Both men thought they were protecting something. Both men were wrong about what it would cost. What began as a private warning in Windsor was about to become a public humiliation beneath the palace gates. The confrontation lasted only minutes, but inside those minutes sat decades of royal pain. Harry did not shout at first. He stared at the guard, then at the gate, then back at the palace beyond it, as if waiting for someone to correct a terrible mistake. But no one came. No aide rushed forward. No call arrived. The order remained standing. Harry asked to speak directly with the senior palace aide on duty, refusing to accept that a guard could become the final voice of the royal household. A senior palace aide is a trusted staff member assigned to handle sensitive matters for working royals and the monarch's private office. That mattered because Harry believed someone inside still had the power to stop this before it became a wound. He was not asking for ceremony, he was asking for a human voice. The guard followed protocol, but duty did not make the moment easier. Protocol means the fixed rules staff must follow during security or official access situations, even when emotions run high. The officer understood that refusing the king's younger son was not ordinary gatekeeping. It carried history. It carried family grief. It carried the dangerous message that the palace could protect itself by turning a prince away like a stranger. Harry stepped closer, and the air seemed to tighten around every word. He said Charles knew he was coming. He said the king had been told. He said there had to be a mistake. The guard's face remained controlled, but his hand tightened around the radio, betraying the discomfort he could not speak. Then came the answer that struck hardest. The instruction had been issued before Harry arrived. Harry froze for a second. That changed everything. A refusal made in the moment could be blamed on confusion. A refusal written before arrival meant planning. It meant someone had seen him coming and decided the door must remain closed. Harry asked whether William had been involved, and the guard did not answer. The silence felt like its own confession, but then the officer repeated the only line he was allowed to give. The order came from Charles' office. Harry looked past the gate again, searching for movement, for a sign, for anyone willing to step forward. A palace aide watched from inside a side entrance, then disappeared before Harry could make eye contact. That small retreat carried a brutal message. The refusal was not only being enforced, it was being observed. Someone inside wanted confirmation that the order had held. Harry turned away slowly, but he did not look defeated. He looked wounded, and wounds can become more dangerous than anger. The guard remained at his post, shaken behind his discipline. Charles remained unseen behind the authority of his office. William's name hung unanswered in the air. By the time Harry returned to the car, the confrontation had already traveled deeper into the palace than he realized. And inside those walls, the real power behind the decision was beginning to show itself. Charles's office did not need to raise its voice. It had doors, schedules, security codes, private secretaries, and the quiet machinery of monarchy. A prince could bring emotion to the gate, but the crown brought procedure. That was the brutal imbalance at the heart of the day. Harry arrived as a son. The palace answered him like a risk file. Charles's office held control over access, timing, security clearance, and the fragile line between family contact and royal protocol. Security clearance means official permission to enter a protected royal space after staff confirm identity, timing, and risk. That mattered because Harry was not simply trying to walk into a building. He was trying to cross back into the inner circle of a family that had learned to protect itself through rules. The king's office understood that one open door could become one uncontrolled conversation. Harry had already left the gate, but his presence still pressed against the walls. The refusal order had been framed as protection of Charles's schedule, yet everyone close to the king knew it carried a deeper meaning. A royal schedule is more than a diary. It is the controlled plan that decides who reaches the monarch and when. That detail mattered, because being removed from the schedule meant being removed from access. For Harry, that was not administration. It was rejection, written in palace language. Charles read the final confirmation note after Harry left and set it down without speaking. The king's face carried relief and grief at the same time, as if neither feeling had permission to fully show itself. The note confirmed the order had held. The gate had remained closed. The palace had avoided an unpredictable meeting. But Charles knew success had come at a cost, and the cost had his son's name on it. Camilla watched him from across the room, careful not to move too quickly into the silence. The queen consort sensed that Charles had chosen institutional safety over paternal instinct, and she understood why that choice would haunt him. She had seen the palace survive storms by holding its shape, but she had also seen what that survival took from the people inside it. Camilla did not challenge the king. She simply watched him stare at the note, and her stillness made the moment heavier. One private secretary had argued that allowing Harry inside without prior clearance would create an uncontrollable situation behind closed doors. That argument later appeared in a documented internal account prepared for senior staff review. The warning was not emotional. It was cold, strategic, and effective. Harry might ask for a direct conversation. Charles might soften. The meeting might spill into anger. The monarchy could not risk a private wound turning into another public earthquake. William's office had been informed after the order was drafted, not before. That timing mattered. The prince had not built the wall, but he was now standing near it. He felt loyalty to Charles, yet sympathy for Harry's humiliation pulled at him from the other side. William understood boundaries. He also understood brothers, and that made the silence around his name more dangerous than any direct accusation. The palace believed it had controlled the day. Charles had stayed protected. Camilla had stayed watchful. William had stayed informed but untouched. Harry had stayed outside. Yet decisions made in controlled rooms rarely stay controlled once the injured person walks away from the door. The palace had kept Harry outside, but it could not keep the consequences from entering every room. The most painful part was not the refusal itself. It was the silence that followed. Harry did not release a statement. Charles did not call. William did not rush to mediate. Camilla did not ask the staff to soften the message. For one long afternoon, the monarchy seemed to hold its breath, as if everyone knew the gate had closed on more than a visit. Harry left the palace grounds without entering, and that absence became its own kind of announcement. No public explanation came. No carefully worded message softened the blow. Approved channels are the official routes palace staff must use when sharing sensitive information, so nothing reaches the public without permission. That mattered because silence was not empty. It was controlled. It told Harry that the palace had chosen order over explanation, and that choice made the refusal feel sharper. Charles remained in his study longer than usual, refusing tea and avoiding the one call everyone knew he should make. The king had protected the day from chaos, but he had not protected himself from guilt. His study mattered because it was one of the few rooms where the monarch could stop performing strength. Inside that quiet space, Charles was no longer only the head of the institution. He was a father who had allowed his son to be turned away. Harry sat alone later that day, replaying the guard's words until anger began to change shape. At first, he felt insulted. Then the insult became grief. Harry had expected resistance, but not this kind of cold finality. He could argue with Charles. He could argue with William. He could even challenge Camilla's influence if he believed it stood between him and the king. But he could not argue with a closed gate and a security order already written before he arrived. Camilla stayed quiet, and that quiet carried calculation as much as concern. The queen consort understood that any attempt to soften the message could look like interference, while any hard defense of the order could make her seem pleased by Harry's humiliation. She chose stillness. But even stillness had meaning. Camilla knew the palace had won the immediate moment. Yet she also knew wounded silence often returns louder than anger. William quietly asked whether Harry had been told the reason. The prince did not ask with outrage. He asked with the careful voice of someone already afraid of the answer. A short internal memo had described the event as access denied under direct instruction, a cold phrase later included in a documented staff summary. The memo mattered because it stripped the moment of its human pain. It turned a son at a gate into a line of procedure. William waited after asking the question, and the pause before the answer revealed everything. Harry had not been told the reason. No one had explained the Windsor warning. No one had said the king feared another uncontrolled confrontation. Charles had created the boundary, but Harry had only been given the bruise. That unanswered question forced one private conversation the palace had been trying to avoid. Because when procedure leaves a wound open, only a human voice can decide whether it deepens or begins to heal. The turning point did not come from a public statement or a palace briefing. It came in a private room, with no aides present, where William finally said what others were too afraid to say. Charles could defend the crown. He could defend the office. He could defend the order. But he could not pretend the man at the gate had not also been his son. William requested the private conversation because silence had become too heavy to carry. He understood the need for boundaries, and he knew the palace could not allow every family wound to become an uncontrolled meeting. A palace briefing is an official update prepared for senior staff or royal figures, so everyone follows the same message. That mattered because briefings had shaped the day from the beginning. But this moment needed no prepared words. It needed one son speaking to one father about another. Charles listened before he answered, but the king already knew where the conversation was going. William told him the order may have protected the palace for one morning, but it had damaged the family for much longer. The prince did not shout. He did not accuse. He spoke with the careful force of someone who understood duty and still refused to let duty erase blood. Charles looked down, and that small movement revealed what his silence had been hiding. William pressed harder, because the wound had a name. Harry deserved at least one clear explanation from his father. Not only a gate officer's command. The future king knew protocol could keep people apart, but he also knew permanent rejection could become its own kind of danger. Protocol means the official rules and steps that guide royal actions, especially during sensitive moments. That mattered because rules had protected Charles from confrontation, yet they had left Harry alone with humiliation. Charles finally admitted what the palace had not dared say aloud. The Windsor meeting had frightened him. The king said Harry's pain had felt impossible to control once the door opened, and that honesty changed the room. Charles was not only defending a decision now, he was confessing fear. The admission later appeared in a recorded private account, prepared by a trusted aide, who was briefed on the conversation afterward. That account made one thing clear. Charles had not acted without feeling. He had acted because feeling had scared him. William did not ask him to reverse the order. The prince knew the gate could not be reopened backward. What happened had already happened. But he urged Charles to own it within the family, to stop hiding behind office language, and to explain the boundary as a father before it hardened into something colder. Charles heard him, and for the first time that day, the king did not reach for procedure. The private exchange changed the palace response, but it did not erase the damage. William had forced the truth into the room. Charles had admitted the fear beneath the command. Harry still had no explanation, and outside the walls, the world was already turning the refusal into a symbol. The monarchy had tried to contain the moment, but by morning, the gate itself had become the story. By sunrise, the private pain had become public theater. The image was simple enough for the whole world to understand. A prince outside, a palace inside, and a gate between them. No long explanation was needed. The public saw distance. The media saw rupture. Supporters saw cruelty. Critics saw consequence. And the monarchy saw a family wound become a national conversation. Palace communications moved quickly, but speed could not soften the damage. The official line framed the incident as a matter of scheduling and security, yet the words sounded too small for what people believed they had witnessed. Palace communications means the team responsible for shaping public messages from the royal household. That mattered because the story was no longer only about what happened, it was about who controlled the meaning of it before the world decided for itself. Harry's absence became more powerful than any speech he could have given. He had once stood near the center of royal life, and now the public imagined him stopped at the edge of it. That was why the story spread so fast. It carried one brutal idea. A son had gone to his father's palace and had not been allowed through the gate. Harry did not need to appear on camera. The silence around him made the wound louder. Camilla read the morning coverage without speaking. The queen consort folded the paper carefully, but her hands paused before she set it down. She knew palace calm had cracked again, and she understood how quickly public sympathy could turn into suspicion. Camilla had survived storms before, but this one carried a dangerous shape. It pulled Charles, Harry, and William into one frame, and it left the public wondering who had truly wanted the gate to stay closed. William watched a broadcaster describe the refusal as a father's office speaking where a father would not, and his expression tightened. The prince had warned Charles that procedure could not replace explanation, but now the warning had escaped the room. A broadcaster is a television or radio presenter who frames a story for the public in simple, powerful language. That mattered because one sentence could shape millions of opinions before the palace had time to answer. Charles remained at the center of the storm, even while others spoke around him. The king heard that a newspaper front page had printed a black and white image of palace gates beneath the headline, "The door that did not open." That single page did what palace language could not. It turned the refusal into a symbol. Charles understood then that the order had not stayed private. It had become part of how the public would judge his reign. A small crowd gathered near Buckingham Palace, some holding phones, others simply staring at the gates, as though they had become evidence. Buckingham Palace is the monarch's main official London residence, and its gates often become a public stage during royal crises. That mattered because the crowd was not just watching a building. They were watching the line between family and monarchy, between love and control, between protection and rejection. Public reaction forced the palace toward a final choice. Harry had become the wounded figure outside. Charles had become the monarch behind the order. William had become the heir caught between both men. Camilla had become the silent witness to a peace that could not hold. And when the noise finally settled, one truth remained sharper than every headline. In the end, the palace gate did what royal language could not. It made the truth visible. Charles had chosen control over uncertainty. Harry had been forced to face the cost of separation. William had seen how fragile the family line had become. And the monarchy had learned that every locked gate protects something, but it also reveals what has already been lost. Harry understood at last that the refusal was more than a security decision. It was the clearest symbol yet of the new distance between him and the royal center. The royal center means the closest circle of people, power, and access around the monarch. That mattered because Harry had once belonged inside that circle without question. Now he had learned that blood alone no longer opened the door. His sadness did not disappear. It changed into something quieter, colder, and harder to move. Charles's office had enforced the boundary, but Charles himself had to live with the emotional meaning of that enforcement. The king could tell himself the order had protected the crown, and in one way, it had. It had prevented another uncontrolled meeting. It had kept the palace schedule intact. It had preserved the calm that monarchy demands. But Charles also knew the father inside him had paid for that calm, and that private cost could not be hidden behind official language forever. Harry accepted that the gate had not closed by accident. That realization cut deeper than the refusal itself. A mistake can be forgiven. A planned order must be understood as a message. Harry had come looking for access, perhaps even for a fragile opening, and instead he found a rule waiting for him before he arrived. He walked away not because the pain was gone, but because he finally understood the shape of it. William saw the danger with painful clarity. The prince understood that the monarchy could survive scandal, headlines, and public anger. But family silence was different. Silence does not fade inside a dynasty. It settles. It hardens. It becomes inheritance. William knew he had inherited more than duty from Charles. He had inherited the wound between father and son, brother and brother, palace and exile. Camilla recognized the victory and the cost at the same time. The queen consort knew the palace had won the immediate battle of control, yet the emotional price had spread far beyond one morning. She had watched Charles choose structure over softness. She had watched William carry the weight of both men. She had watched Harry become the figure outside the gate, and she understood that symbols do not disappear simply because doors close. Charles finally acknowledged in private that both truths would remain. The order had protected the crown, but it had wounded the father. That admission, later described through a documented private account shared with senior staff, gave the moment its final meaning. The monarchy had chosen structure over reconciliation, and everyone involved paid a price. Harry lost the illusion of easy return. Charles lost the comfort of pretending distance was neutral. William inherited a family wound he could not ignore. Camilla saw that calm can still leave damage behind. The story ends not with a question, but with a verdict. The palace stayed secure. The monarchy stayed intact, and a prince walked away knowing the door behind him had closed by command, not by chance. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.